This fantastic piece here is called the Ruler's Feather Headdress, and I think it's probably of Montezuma II, and it's a Mexica or Aztec piece, and it dates from about 1428 to 1520. A little bit iffy on the dates, but there it is made out of the feathers of the quetzal and cotinga birds, and also there's gold that's really significant here, and other pieces that was used to construct this. But the main materials is feathers and gold. So the early Mexican feather headdress is one of those fragile objects that museums have in order to maintain them is very difficult. This one is actually in Vienna in Austria, and they usually have to have a commission of experts to study and analyze the condition of the what's left of these feather headdresses. And this one is really well preserved, and that's because of the reason. I mean, it was highly prized by the Europeans after it was supposedly given to the conquerors, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But the materials and techniques of this feather headdress were analyzed, and when it presents a flat appearance, that flat appearance dates back to a restoration that happened in 1878. Sometimes this headdress it used to be thought as maybe a standard, like that would be carried in war. So that kind of made the loss of the object's three-dimensional shape would have had as a headdress. So this feather headdress comprises a wealth of different materials, and most of them are organic ones, such as feathers, plant fibers, wood, leather, paper, and textiles, but also the non-organic materials such as gold and gilded brass. The friction and abrasions that is caused by these materials and the artifact's age have compromised its state of preservation and complicated its conservation. Remember, these are organic materials, are irreparable, brittle, and have fragile areas. But this one has been carefully cleaned, and there's constantly, it's on display in Vienna, an ethnology museum. So it's a really magnificent artifact, but there's this myth and truth about whether this feather headdress really belonged to the legendary Aztec Emperor Montezuma II, and how and why and with whom did how did it come to Europe? So today, many myths and legends are still linked to 1519, when Spanish ships reached the shores of what is now Mexico, and they encountered the thriving Aztec Empire. Initially, contacts were friendly, but soon Hernan Cortez and his conquistadors vanquished the empire and took the Emperor Montezuma II prisoner. After that happened, countless artifacts were sent back to Europe, and the most magnificent of this early Mexican feather headdress, it was first known in Mexico as penacho, but the Europeans called it ein Moorischer Hut. Don't worry about the spelling. It basically means a Moorish hat. Moorish is spelled Moorish, and that derives from the word the Moors, and Moors derives from like others that lived in Muslim Spain or in North Africa, and but because of the Spanish influence on the Iberian Peninsula, it was the Spanish who came to the New World, especially Mexico, to vanquish the Native Americans, and so that's why it was called a Moorish hat. It was first mentioned in an inventory of the armory of Ferdinand II of Tyrol, and it was after he died, it was then moved to Ambras Castle. And then during the Napoleonic Wars, the collection at Ambras was moved to Vienna, and it was displayed at the Belvedere Palace, and that's where the first person who tried to preserve it discovered the feather headdress. His name was Hochstetter, and he recognized its importance. So this is, not even 60 years after it was taken from Mexico that they're realizing how important this feather headdress is. So they moved it to be restored as early as 1596, and put in the Imperial Museum of Natural History. And then together with the museum's other holdings, the feather headdress eventually put into the Museum of Ethnology that opened in 1928. So in the late 16th century, the feather headdress was listed as an Indian hat in later inventories, and in 1788, it was called an Indian apron. So some of the pictures you may have seen are shown upside down. So this erroneous identification probably resulted from the loss of the original golden beak. So there used to be a beak on here. This made it difficult to determine the object's original function and how it was worn. In 1855, the green feathers were identified as those as the Quetzal, Quetzal, which then in turn pointed it to Mexico as the artifact's country of origin, because that's where most of those birds come from. At the same time, its original interpretation as a headdress was once again accepted. And so in the course of what's called the Congress of the Americanists, that was held in Vienna in 1908, an international commission ultimately said its identification was a feather headdress, and that has remained the scientific consensus until today. In the early 20th century, it witnessed the first attempts to link the feather headdress to Montezuma himself. This sounded spectacular and it enhanced its sensational fame of the artifact. So that kind of made it more special because it's of Montezuma, who was the vanquished ruler of the Aztecs. This term featherwork crown of Montezuma was first used in this context. It ignored the fact that rulers of the Aztec Empire crowned with a tiara set of turquoises was something that they used to do. So that's why we're not necessarily sure, what the purpose of this was. It's celebrated not only as the last of its kind, but also for its unrivaled iridescent splendor of the hundreds of Quetzal feathers and its gold appliques. In a number of shows, featherwork artifacts have survived, and these featherwork objects play a seminal role for the Aztecs, the Mayas, and their neighbors. They were used to note rank and status of princes, dignitaries, priests, or even successful warriors. Of the many hundreds of Aztec featherworks that once existed, only a few have survived intact like this, and even this one has been altered. And just like jade and turquoise and gold, featherworks were highly valued by the Aztecs and other Mesoamerican people. Okay, so the headdress was the first of the Mexican featherworks to be, like I said, rediscovered in that Austrian museum. It consists of over 450 tails of the resplendent Quetzal, as well as the feathers of the lovely Cotinga. There's other pieces of other organic material include the roseate spoonbill and the squirrel cuckoo, in addition to shorter feathers of the Quetzal. They are mounted on a net of vegetable fibers and wooden sticks, and then the front part is decorated with gold ornaments. In its original state, a golden bird beak was attached to the headdress, and upon its discovery, the headdress was restored. And then now there's metal ornaments, which is actually gilded bronze substituted for the gold. To give you an idea of how big this is, because it's hard to imagine, I mean, you think it goes in someone's head, so, it can't be that big, but it's in height, almost 4 feet in height. And it's in width, so along the wide areas, it is almost 5'8". And I'm 5'8". So just imagine if this is worn on someone's head, they wouldn't have much mobility, and obviously before a ceremonial function and to show off the power and authority of the ruler. So let's see. I think one of the things that is the reason why this was taken is because of the gold. Now, some people have argued that Spaniards' main reason for conquering the Aztec provinces were really to convert the population to Catholicism, but their interest in gold is really, very important part of this too, and not finding gold and so much gold in this region is going to be the reason why this region is conquered by the Spanish. A headdress such as this one with a golden beak attached is going to be, it's really just considered a fantastic art piece. So let me show you 2 more pictures to give you an idea of what it probably look like if someone was wearing it. So this would have been the beak of the, you know, that's missing. So this piece is missing. But I mean, this, look how beautiful and tall these feathers would have been. You can kind of see that iridescence on this, you know, recreation of someone wearing it. And then this gives you the detail of the smaller blue and green feathers, and then the brown squirrel probably, and then these gold appliques that's put on here. And so this gives you a very good detailed view of the feathered headdress. And make sure you watch the Khan Academy video on this because that gives a very good detail on the feathered headdress.